Yo, we step up in the scene, check your engine is clean. DPF guys got your ride smoking green. No block, no drag, just pure machine. Come show us your truck, we'll make it pristine. We just wanna know, can your diesel uphold? Bring something dirty, we'll turn it to gold. It's like this, we clean up your flow. Now your engine is gliding. It's time to hit the road.
Oh, here we are. Well, hello. Live. So it's March 16th, 2025. Can you believe it? We are halfway through March. Welcome to the DPF Guys live Q&A. I'm James, and today we are tackling the biggest diesel emissions and after-treatment questions because nothing kills uptime or your wallet faster than a DPF failure, constant regens, or a bad SCR system. We've got a pretty packed session today covering how to spot an after-treatment failure before it happens, turbo maintenance secrets, and how to reduce regens. And stick around because later in the show, we'll be breaking down the real differences between gas station DEF and store-bought DEF in jugs. You don't want to miss that. And who would? Drop your questions in the comments below. Let's keep those trucks running strong. If you need expert DPF cleaning or after-treatment help, call or text DPF Guys at 404-999-1361 or visit dpfguys.com. That's open on my laptop behind me. Again, if you need to reach us anytime, day or night, even now, call or text 404-999-1361. I'm going to bring that up again so you can screenshot it. Are you ready? Here it comes. 404-999-1361. Snap a screenshot of that and lock it in. If you call now, we're technically not open, but Lynn Diesel, our AI receptionist, is waiting for your call. Give her a shout or leave us a voicemail. She can answer basic questions, and we're testing her out a little bit, so let me know what you think. So let's get into it. Question number one. What are the key differences in DPF maintenance for highway trucks versus off-road equipment like mining and construction machinery? Now, construction machinery can be small, down to a bobcat or a little mini excavator, or big. Now, mining stuff is generally big, bigger, or biggest, but they all kind of work the same way. So while highway trucks and off-road equipment may operate in completely different environments with different use cases, they often use the same engines and after-treatment systems. Now, off-road, you're probably going to see more Caterpillar or things like that, but there are many pieces of off-road equipment that use the exact same engine that might be in your truck. That means that the core principles of DPF maintenance really apply to both. But how to determine what service intervals and what specific challenges you face will vary, of course. One of them is miles versus engine hours. Highway trucks almost always follow a mileage-based maintenance schedule, such as clean the DPF every 200 to 250,000 miles. But off-road equipment, however, runs on engine hours usually. Since these machines can operate at low speeds or even not moving at all, a good rule of thumb is taking 50 miles per hour and 50 miles per hour as your kind of speed, and which means that 5,000 engine hours on a piece of off-road equipment will equal about 250,000 miles. What else is different? Driving conditions, obviously. Different stresses on the asset, on the vehicle. Highway trucks typically run at steady RPMs, cruising at highway speeds for long stretches. Occasional idle time at truck stops, but rarely pushed to extreme limits. Off-road equipment, however, constant high load, low speed operation with frequent throttle changes. Heavy dirt, dust, and vibration can wear components much faster. So watch for it in both. And then excessive unproductive idling. And I don't try to really criticize idling because sometimes idling is necessary. You're in a dump truck waiting for it to get loaded, or you're in a loader waiting for the dump truck to show up. So I just say, unproductive idling, meaning you're just letting the thing idle just to idle. But avoid excessive idling, just as a rule of thumb. Changes in fuel consumption. So watch for changes in fuel consumption. A sudden drop in your miles per gallon or gallons per hour for off-road equipment could indicate a DPF or injector issues. If you start seeing soot and smoke where there was not soot and smoke before, black or gray exhaust smoke means your after-treatment system is not functioning like it should. Also check those stacks to make sure that they are nice and clean, no black soot on them. Black soot on a diesel piece of diesel equipment, diesel powered equipment, um, that does have a working after treatment system is definitely a red flag. Air filters, that's a big deal to keep an eye on that. Off-road equipment requires more frequent air filter changes due to dust and debris exposure. Frequent regens, if your off-road equipment keeps calling for regens, check your engine hours. It's probably time for a DPF cleaning. Also, don't interrupt a regen once it starts. So when off-road equipment initiates a regen, just let it finish. A lot of times people will cut it off midway because they've got to haul some rocks somewhere, but just let it run. If it needs to regen, let it finish regenning. The next time so if you're in a unit goes into regen, just relax for a minute, let it finish. Go on TikTok and check out DPF guys. Let the unit do its job. A properly completed regen keeps your after treatment system, your DPF, etc., working as intended. Now, how to actually stretch the life in both highway and off-road or construction equipment. High quality motor oil is a big deal. A better quality motor oil will burn less rapidly, will burn more slowly. There's always going to be a small amount of oil burn, but a high quality oil will break down less and burn less. One of the biggest sources of ash in the DPF system are burned metals, and those come from the motor oil. So burning less motor oil with a higher quality motor oil will reduce the amount of ash in your DPF, which will increase its lifespan. Run a proven fuel additive. Clean Air Fleet, for example, right over my shoulder here. That'll cut down soot, improve your fuel burn, and extend regen intervals. For off-road equipment, and definitely invest in really good oil filtration and fuel filtration. You want to get it down to 1 micron. Clean Air Fleet does make a really, really good filtration system for both fuel and oil. And some of the off-road equipment, if you actually want to go further, add a third filter for your hydraulic fluids, which is probably even more important than filtration for your oil and fuel, even though those are very important. So you can tailor your DPF cleaning schedules around your engine workload. Take your proactive maintenance steps, and you'll keep your trucks and your machines working harder, longer, and with fewer costly surprises. All right. Question number 2. By the way, if you're watching this live right now and you leave me a question, whether it be on Facebook or YouTube or wherever you may be, I'll see it here in a minute and I can answer your question one-on-one right now. If you're catching this after it's been recorded, please leave your question in the comments below and I will get to them and either answer them immediately or definitely include them in an upcoming live. I'm going to quick check to see if anything's come in. Hold tight. There you go. American Iron. I tell you what, this is all right. This gentleman is definitely somebody I enjoy seeing him pop up in my comments because he always has something good to share. And that's true. Hydraulic cranes, they do idle a lot. In fact, and like in a rail yard, you might have a crane that pulls out of the garage and will drive a few hundred yards and then sit there and just swing around all day. And I have seen cranes that might only have 8 or 10,000 miles on them, but we'll have 8 or 10,000 hours. Because people will say, well, it doesn't have that many miles on it. Well, how can the DPF be dirty? I'm like, look at the engine hours. And you're totally right. And yes, to answer your question, using Clean Air Fleet additive should reduce carbon buildup also. Yes, not only are you reducing the carbon buildup that comes from just the fuel burning less clean, because you can get a better fuel burn, a more complete fuel burn, which is going to not only give you less soot downstream and less soot to build up carbon every which way. Um, it will also it'll give you a boost in fuel economy, boost in power usually, but also the carbon will just build up in your fuel system, not even in your exhaust system. We're talking about carbon will build up in your injectors, carbon will build up in your fuel pump, your common rail system, and a additive like Clean Air Fleet will help dissolve and break down that carbon. In fact, what's interesting, I always have to warn people, and consider yourself warned if you do become a new customer of ours with Clean Air Fleet. We are offering a 10% discount on all first-time orders of anybody ordering a case of Clean Air Fleet, who is watching this episode. But what I always warn people, and I'm warning you, should you become a customer, is that the first time somebody begins using Clean Air Fleet in their truck, especially if they've got some miles on it, what you'll notice is the fuel filter will become dirty very, very quickly after you have run a tank or two of fuel through your truck that has been treated with Clean Air Fleet. The reason this is exactly what our friend American Iron specified here is the Clean Air Fleet is breaking down all of the carbon, breaking it loose, and now it's being picked up and filtered out by your fuel filter. And that means your fuel filter will get dirty. And I always tell people, if you're going to get a case of Clean Air Fleet and begin using it in your truck, also buy another fuel filter, because you will likely need to replace that fuel filter after a tank or two. But don't worry, because now that everything's clean, that fuel filter will actually last longer than it was lasting before. What do we got here? Oh, cool. I got and I have a message here from Store My Truck. Hey, thank you for leaving me the Store My Truck information. We'll talk to you more about that. In fact, what I'd like to do is actually, if you're watching right now, thanks so much for watching. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, but storemytruck.com. I'd love to get you on to one of these episodes, and let's talk about truck parking. Let's talk about the importance of safety. Let's talk about, what drivers would like to see in parking, how much more parking, et cetera, et cetera. I think that would be a really cool show to have. All right, I am distracted enough. I'm going to go back to the questions here. Please, if anybody's watching, you want to shoot me a question, drop it in here. I'll check periodically. All right, question number 2. What are the early warning signs that your diesel engine is heading for an expensive after-treatment failure? All right, what are those warning signs? Your diesel engine will always warn you before the after-treatment failure, usually, before something turns into a costly repair bill. But sometimes those warnings aren't a flashing red light on your dashboard. Sometimes those warnings are a little subtle, so you need to know what to look for. One of the warnings is frequent regens. Not an emergency yet, but if your truck keeps going into regen when it wasn't doing it before, and you haven't gotten your DPF cleaned recently, that's one of your first clues that the DPF is becoming overloaded with soot beyond what the regen can handle. I've done some videos on this. The regen, think about how you take care of your kitchen garbage can, for example. It's got a cereal box in it, an egg carton, milk jug, some bags and whatnot, all of this kind of fluffy stuff. And your wife goes, hey man, could you take the garbage out? And you're a man, so you're like, well, let me help. Let me show you what I'm going to do. You take your big fat foot and you crush down the egg cartons and the cereal boxes and everything else. And now it goes from filling up the garbage can to just being, a couple of inches on the bottom. You've got more room. You bought yourself another day. That's a lot like a regen, where it basically is burning off that layer of soot, but there's always some ash left behind that is not going to leave. And so if the truck suddenly calls for a parked regen when it wasn't doing that before, if it's been more than a couple 100,000 miles since your DPF cleaning, your truck is really telling you that it's time to get your DPF clean. So watch out for the frequent regens, because that is a warning. The your truck will go into a passive or rolling regen just while you're cranking down the highway. You may not even notice it. That'll normally happen every 300 to 500 miles. This is normal, and that's when the system burns off soot while you're driving at highway speeds. Asking for a park regen every 300 to 500 miles is not normal, because what happens is it may ask for a park regen after 500 miles, then after 400, then 300, then 20, and then all of a sudden the regen's not working anymore. So if you ignore this and you just keep doing regens, guess what's going to happen? Your truck's going to go to limp mode, and you're probably going to have to call a tow truck. And so now a simple DPF cleaning that could be measured in hundreds of dollars is now going to cost you that, plus a tow bill, plus being stranded someplace you don't want to be stranded and losing a load or whatever it might be. So just keep an eye on that. What else can happen? Soot buildup on upstream components. So if you let your DPF stay clogged for too long, that soot will begin to back up because it can't make its way out. It will start to cake your exhaust downpipes. It will back up into your turbo, your EGR system, and your intake manifold. This can cause something as simple as turbo efficiency loss, clogged EGR coolers, reduced airflow, and this will only make the problem worse. Also keep in mind that if you do get that layer of soot built up on the pipe that's leading to the turbo intake, now you have this layer that's a few millimeters thick of soot, and if one of those chunks falls off and hits the turbo blades while those things are going 30,000 RPMs, it'll take a chunk out of those turbo blades like you hit it with a bullet. So, you just want to keep an eye on that. The longer you wait, but this is just rule of thumb when it comes to any sort of maintenance, just like your roof, your marriage, whatever it is. If there's a problem, it is always more efficient to take care of it early than wait. So just like that, just like your roof, just like your car, just like your tires, whatever it might be, the sooner you fix the problem, the less it'll cost to fix it. The longer you wait, the more expensive it will be. Another red flag: soot on the tailpipe. A healthy DPF traps all the soot, not just some of it, but all of it. If you see any black soot on the tailpipe, your DPF is cracked and is no longer being a filter. It's letting the soot through. A cracked DPF, what does that equal? Mandatory replacement. You have no choice but to replace that DPF. And what causes that cracked DPF? It's usually an upstream issue like low compression in one or more cylinders, potential failing injectors leading to excessive fueling, excessive back pressure damaging the substrate. Again, once it gets so plugged up and that exhaust is just hammering on there, it can damage the substrate, damage the DPF, cause it to crack. So how do you prevent this? Pay attention to regen frequency. Passive regen every so often, that's perfectly fine. Don't sweat that. But if the truck suddenly goes, hey, pull over and regenerate me, it's telling you that it is plugged up and needs a cleaning. Or potentially you might have a pressure differential sensor that's acting up or whatever. But if you say, hey, I just bought this truck, especially if you get a used truck with about 400,000 miles on it from a fleet, it is not uncommon to begin having the frequent regens and DPF issues within 100,000 or 200,000 miles after that. Reason being is you actually bought a good truck, hopefully, usually. But when they sell those trucks, they do not clean the DPFs before they sell them. And I tell you what, allegedly, hang on a second, let me turn my mic down here, touch. Allegedly, I don't want to pick on the dealers, but they'll tell you sometimes, oh no, that DPF has been cleaned. And really all it is they ran a regen on the truck before they sold it, and which means you're going to get down the road and probably have to deal with the regen. So frequent regens, big red flag on anything with a diesel engine and emissions. Don't ignore things like low power, reduced power, noticeably less pull, when you're pulling heavy. Watch your fuel economy. If your fuel economy begins to drop, or if the truck just kind of feels a little poochy, a little sluggish, run the Clean Air Fleet fuel additive. to reduce soot buildup and extend your DPF life. At the first sign of frequent parked regens, schedule a DPF cleaning. In fact, I know a guy. Call us at 404-999-1361 or text us, and we can get you in, get you out, make it fast, make it painless, and then you're back rolling again for another 200,000, 300,000 or more miles. And so getting your DPF cleaned is cheaper than a new turbo, EGR cooler, or DPF replacement. So your truck will begin to tell you when it's in trouble. Listen to it before it costs you big money. All right, let me check here again. All right, nothing coming in from Store My Truck. Oh, this is a good one. Question number 3. I've been getting these questions about biodiesel. So how does the use of biodiesel blends impact maintenance schedules and emission systems of diesel-powered equipment? And this would apply to, on highway as well as off highway. So biodiesel is one of those things where some people swear by it and others swear at it and avoid it like the plague. But I guess before we talk about whether you should run it, in your truck or your off-road equipment or your generator or your pump, whatever it is. Let's break down exactly what biodiesel is and how it affects your engine and emission system. So biodiesel is a renewable fuel made from vegetable oils, animal fats, or recycled cooking grease. And unlike regular diesel, which comes from crude oil, biodiesel is made of a process called transesterification, where the fats and oils are turned into a fuel that can be burned in a diesel engine. And there are a variety of biodiesels, and here's how to kind of identify it. Biodiesel blends are labeled by the percentage of biodiesel mixed with the petroleum diesel. So B for bio and 5 for 5%. So B5, do the math, 5% biodiesel, 95% petroleum diesel. And because it's such a tiny amount of biodiesel, it generally is safe for all diesel engines. Then we go up to B10. And if my memory serves me correctly, that would be 10% biodiesel, 90% petroleum diesel. It's becoming more common, and they claim that it does have a slightly higher lubricity than petroleum diesel by itself. And then B20, 20% biodiesel, 80% petroleum diesel, the most widely available high blend biodiesel. And then, of course, B100, which is nothing but biodiesel. And it does best practices. Again, talk to your mechanic, talk to your engineering team. It would require some fuel system modifications, and it is not approved by most engine manufacturers. So most fuel stations do carry biodiesel blends and will be labeled, appropriately, but B5 and lower blends may not always be disclosed. In other words, they could be selling you biodiesel and you don't even know you're using it. And especially in some states, which I don't know, I'll have to look this up for you. Some states will mandate biodiesel, but they will not require a label. So you could be burning diesel in your truck, biodiesel in your truck right now, and not only know it. And is there any difference between biodiesel and regular diesel? Well, one of them is cetane rating. So regularly, biodiesel generally has a higher cetane number than petroleum diesel. Now, again, premium diesel might, ignite better, but so in theory, biodiesel would ignite slightly faster than a regular diesel. Lubricity, they claim that biodiesel adds more natural lubricity, which is just basically the slipperiness of the fuel, which helps protect injectors and fuel pumps. I would be much more comfortable getting my lubricity from Clean Air Fleet than I would, trusting the biodiesel, but that's just me. Maybe I'll change my mind on this, but I'm always a little cautious with some of these claims. Now, much like the E85 gasoline, which is, does have corn-based alcohol in it, it does, E85 gas does have a bit less energy in it. So you do, even though the E85 gasoline might be a little bit cheaper. You're getting less bang for your buck, so your fuel economy will degrade slightly. Same thing with biodiesel. It has slightly less energy per gallon, meaning you may notice a drop in fuel economy compared to just straight up pure petroleum diesel. Cold weather performance, biodiesel does gel at a higher temperature than regular diesel, so um, you will really make sure that if you're going to use biodiesel, especially the higher concentrations of biodiesel, that you watch out for cold climates and use an anti-gelling agent like Clean Air Fleet, which does anti-gelling as well. Um, Biodiesel is pretty much available everywhere. Midwestern states, very popular, Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota, Missouri, Indiana, etc. They will push the 10% to 20% biodiesel, the B20 to B10 to B20s, because they have a strong soybean farming area, and much biodiesel is made from soybeans. Um, and California, Oregon, Washington promote B5 and B20 strictly for emissions reasons. New York and Pennsylvania have blended biodiesel mandates in winter months, and southern states like Texas, Florida, I would imagine Georgia and others have some biodiesel availability, but fewer mandates. In other words, it's not as required by the state. So if you're running across country, always check the pump label. I know it's just like it's one more thing you've got to watch out for as a trucker. Um, you might be running 20% biodiesel and not even know it. Um, Another thing people say is that LJ will form more readily in biodiesel, um, and that's not true. Biodiesel is no more, no less susceptible to LJ contamination, but it's not the diesel fuel that the LJ is actually. Yes, it's living in your tank, but that LJ cannot grow, cannot thrive if you do not have water in your fuel. One of the symptoms of having excess water in your diesel fuel is you see goop, you see biofilm in your fuel system. And that simply cannot exist if you demulsify all the water from your diesel. Um, so in one way to do that, one way to get the water out of your fuel is Clean Air Fleet. In fact, one of the few additives that actually does pull water out of your diesel, which will desiccate, will basically just, you know, will dehydrate your any microbes that are in your fuel and will just kill it off over time because microbial growth cannot exist in diesel fuel if there is no water for them in the diesel. Also, if you store biodiesel for long periods or buy from a very low volume station, fuel contamination is a real concern. Um, so that's where, again, you'd want to, be careful where you get it from. Make sure it's a high turnover place. And Clean Air Fleet will definitely help you, not just with biodiesel, but other diesel as well, um, because it's going to prevent microbial growth, because it's gonna pound down that, get all the water out of it, especially if you've got storage tanks for your biodiesel. It's going to give you better combustion efficiency in any type of fuel, bio or otherwise, reducing soot buildup. It's going to eliminate injector fouling by keeping your fuel system very clean, get the asphaltenes out of the system and everything else. And especially with biofuels that gel at higher temperatures, it's going to increase the pour point. In other words, it's going to make it so that you can go colder and it won't gel on you. So then the final question is, should you use it or not? Um, if you can only get biodiesel, it's not the end of the world, but you need to stay on top of your fuel filters, just like anything. Um, be careful in cold weather. Use Clean Air Fleet fuel additive, please. You'll thank me. Um, so if your truck runs fine on regular diesel, you don't need to use biodiesel. You'd probably use it just be fine. Um, but if you don't have any, if you use it, just maintain your truck and you won't have any issues. But of course, check with your mechanic, check with your dealer, see if they've got any restrictions or recommendations, or they might say, 5% biodiesel is fine, 10% biodiesel is fine, but stay away from 20% or higher. And listen to your dealer and your mechanic. Okay, what do we got here? Anything else? Nope, we're good. Um, Question number 4. What are the most common failures in SCR? That's your selective catalytic reduction system. And how can you prevent them? Your SCR, your selective catalytic reducer, um, that is what eliminates NOx or reduces NOx. But when it fails, you're looking at costly downtime. And um, there are, at as far as I can tell, there are no aftermarket SCRs. Those are all OEM, and an SCR is always rather expensive. And it's not unusual to see a replacement SCR going for 10,000 or more dollars pretty commonly. Um, so here's what goes wrong and how to avoid it. One of them is DEF contamination and DEF doser or injector failure. So what is DEF? It's 32.5% urea, 67.5% deionized water, and nothing else. Don't add anything to it. Please just use it out of the pump or out of the jug. Don't put anything in there. Um, and so DEF that might be contaminated with water, with fuel, dirt, that's going to damage your DEF doser, clog the SCR catalyst. Um, Sometimes frozen DEF can expand. The system is designed to freeze and be fine, but um, if there's some issues with your system, it may freeze and crack something, but that really doesn't affect your SCR too much. Um, I always recommend having a refractometer. We do sell them at DPF Guys. You can also get them on Amazon. Use only sealed or trusted DEF sources. Store DEF properly to prevent contamination. Another thing is NOx sensor failures and false DEF codes. Failed or failing NOx sensors can trigger false SCR efficiency codes. Um, NOx sensors are designed to last for about 200,000 miles. So if you've got more than 200,000 miles in your NOx sensors, I wouldn't panic, but just keep in mind that you may be looking at replacing them at some point here. Um, NOx sensors actually, they're little computers. They're actually fairly sophisticated in what they do. But one of the things is they're kind of like a light bulb. There's actually a heating element in many of the NOx sensors. And they can just, like a light bulb, can just burn out over time. So be aware of that. Um, and also a failing NOx sensor, like a failing outlet or inlet NOx sensor, if they're reading too high or too low, um, they can cause your system to think that it needs to dispense more DEF. And if it overdoses the DEF, it will potentially coat the inside of the SCR, causing it not to function properly. So that's why you always want to kind of keep your eye on your DEF consumption, where if suddenly you start using more DEF than you usually do, um, that might tell you might got something going on. Um, so if you replace your NOx sensors, it's recommended to do them in pairs. I'm okay with doing just one or the other, but if you're going to replace them preventatively, then do both. Um, Always check for exhaust leaks before replacing your sensors. Um, the SCR can clog up, um, and that's another thing. It can clog up with soot. It can clog up with DEF. Um, so soot and excess DEF buildup can coat the SCR catalyst, reducing the NOx conversion. Both soot and DEF buildup can be cleaned. We can definitely do that on pretty much any truck out there. A big deal is if you see soot on your tailpipe or stacks, guess what? Your DPF is cracked, and that soot is poisoning your SCR. Um, so what does a cracked DPF means? Means you got no choice. You got to replace it and know what causes it. So a cracked DPF is going to be caused by low compression in one or more cylinders, due to needing usually a valve adjustment. Is all you need to fix that. Um, Failing injectors, overfueling the engine. This happens a lot on the Cummins 6.7. The Cummins 6.7 engine is notorious for needing 6 new injectors every 250,000 miles. So if you have any Cummins 6.7 issues, you know the number, 404-999-1361. Call us with your Cummins 6.7 issues. Excessive back pressure damaging the substrate on the DPF can crack that as well. So we can fix all of this, but you'll need a new DPF usually and a full engine check to find the root cause. Now, about those 2015 Freightliners, again, that's going to be 2015, meaning the end of 2014, where the 2015s were released, early in 2014, or the beginning of 2016, where the 2015 model year kind of carried over. The Detroit engines in those trucks, the 2015 Freightliners, the vintage 2015 Freightliners, with the DD13, DD15 engines, had a bad fuel map program and caused a incorrect fuel air mixture. And the excessive fuel, what it did was overheat the SCR, and guess what it did? It damaged or destroyed the one box. And by the time that a fix was released, the damage had already been done. So if you've got getting repeat SCR efficiency codes, especially if you get codes that seem to only come up when you are hauling, 30, 40,000 pounds up a grade, and then all of a sudden you'll get DEF quality, SCR efficiency, NOx conversion, blah, 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 one or all of those, and you regen your truck at the top of the hill and you go back down and you're dandy. That means and if you've got a 2015 Freightliner or a 14 or a 16, guess what? You've got a one box and it's likely toast. As always, check for upstream exhaust leaks. Those can be a real stickler. Even a small hairline exhaust leak is enough to throw off your full after treatment system. A good thing to do is use the Clean Air Fleet fuel additive. And I can't say enough about it. It works wonderfully. Replace your cracked DPF and make sure you troubleshoot the engine issue that caused it, because it's always an upstream issue that does cause cracked DPFs usually. DPF dosing malfunctions. Too much DEF causes crystal buildup. Too little triggers NOx codes. And to prevent that, inspect your DEF injector and replace your DEF filters frequently. Well, it says regularly, which means I recommend that, for your annual DOT inspection, at that time, replace your DEF filter just so you get it done. Look for any exhaust leaks down by the SCR. So you might not have exhaust leaks leading into the DOC and DPF, but you might have an exhaust leak between the outlet of the DPF and the inlet of the SCR. That can cause issues, can skew the NOx readings and trigger false codes. So always look for exhaust leaks before you assume that you've got to replace some hardware, whether it be the SCR, the DPF, the DOC. Catching these issues early prevent derates, keeps you off the tow hook, and avoids costly one box replacements or other component replacements. So stay ahead of the game. And what do? Listen to your truck. It will talk to you and tell you what it needs. All right, question number 5. These are good questions this week. What are the common signs of exhaust gas recirculation or EGR valve failure in diesel generators, and how can they be prevented? I've actually gotten a couple of generator questions recently, which I appreciate. People kind of forget that diesel engines are in almost everything, and generators there are a ton of generators out there cranking away, and a lot of people aren't aware of how to properly maintain them. So guess what? And a generator, just like your truck, will have an EGR. So when it works, great. When it fails, what do you want to expect? Performance issues, dirty exhaust soot, excess soot, and expensive repairs. Hopefully, I'm going to help you avoid the expensive repairs. And just, while we're focusing on generators for this particular answer, same problems can happen if you are on highway, off-road, that sort of thing. So if you run a semi, construction equipment, or any diesel-powered machinery, just pay attention, because I'm going to be talking about some pretty interesting stuff. Because a failing EGR can wreck your engine and emission system, or at least wreck your day. One of the things is, especially if your engine is running very dirty, which it will in like a Cummins 6.7 after 250,000 miles, or a Detroit engine that needs a valve adjustment, it is very common for the delta P or pressure differential sensor to get clogged up with soot. The delta P sensor up in the EGR cooler monitors exhaust pressure before and after the EGR valve. If that baby gets clogged up, and with a lot of carbon buildup, it simply sends bad data to the ECM, the engine control module, leading to poor EGR performance and unnecessary check engine lights. What happens? Your generator or your truck might throw EGR efficiency code or go into derate for no stinking reason. So inspect and clean your delta P sensors up by your EGR valve regularly. Sometimes the mechanics will run a thin piece of wire through the holes in the pressure sensor to kind of knock the clumps of ash, or not ash, but soot out of there. Run Clean Air Fleet additive. I've mentioned that before. That will have your engine run much cleaner, produce less soot, and obviously less soot in your exhaust means longer DPF life. You don't need to come and see me that often. And of course, less soot to plug up your delta P sensors and your EGR valve and your EGR and everything else. Coolant leaks in the EGR cooler. This is a big deal. So the EGR cooler has, it will mix on one side of it, it has the hot exhaust. On the other side, it has tubes with where coolant will flow through, and the coolant will cool off the exhaust, which can then get recycled into the engine. And so, it's a very delicate kind of this weaving in and out with some TIG welds and everything like that. And if that develops a hairline crack, you will then leak coolant into the into the EGR valve, and then that coolant will pass down into your emission system and cause further trouble. And you can tell if coolant is leaking, especially if it's a lot, because you will see white smoke. And if a lot of it gets out, you can also hydrolock your motor, which can be a major engine killer. So if you're losing coolant but not seeing a leak on the ground, check your EGR cooler. What can you do besides cross your fingers? Pressure test the EGR cooler. If you are in doubt, pull it off. We can test it and see if it's leaking, if coolant levels are dropping unexpectedly. Look for white smoke in the exhaust. If it smells sweet, you've got a coolant. You're leaking coolant and you're burning the coolant. Another thing is stuck open EGR valve, because it can get stuck due to servo failure or just because it's gummed up with soot. If your EGR valve is open, it dumps too much exhaust in the intake, causing loss of power, rough idle, excessive soot, frequent regens, clogged DPFs. If your generator or truck smokes a lot and struggles under load, this could be the issue. Always inspect your EGR valve for carbon buildup and clean as needed. We do clean EGR valves here. Make sure your delta P sensor is reading correctly. Bad data can keep the valve open. What if it's stuck closed? If the EGR valve is stuck closed, NOx levels skyrocket and it will cause SCR efficiency issues and excessive DEF consumption. So that'll lead to higher exhaust temperatures, which can damage the cylinders, more frequent regens. That's why I always tell people, if your truck is asking for regeneration when it wasn't doing it before, that is telling you that you've got something going on, that you can, give us a call at 404-999-1361 and let us help you diagnose that. So monitor your NOx and EGR valve flow, or EGR flow rates in diagnostic software if you have it. If they're too high, a valve might be stuck shut. Check for upstream exhaust leaks. False readings can affect the EGR operation. Don't ignore EGR problems. Failing EGR systems leads to bigger issues such as soot buildup, DPF failures, and even coolant contamination. Wherever it's going to get coolant where it shouldn't be, and that's no good. So if your generator, truck, or off-road equipment is throwing EGR codes, don't ignore them. Regular maintenance, proper fuel treatment, and keeping sensors clean will save you from expensive downtime. So at DPF Guys, what can we do? We can clean and test your EGR system if you're having issues. Don't wait until it puts you on the side of the road and potentially damage your truck, your engine, and your pocketbook. If you need to get a hold of us, give us a call, 404-999-1361. Call us anytime, day or night. And if we are currently closed, like we are right now, you can still call us at 404-999-1361 and talk to Lynn Diesel. Our AI assistant is there to take your calls. All right, so another one here, number 6. What do we have? This is about turbochargers. How can regular inspection and maintenance of turbochargers and heavy-duty diesel engines improve performance and fuel efficiency? Um, so the turbocharger isn't really an emissions part, but it is the last stop on the journey that your exhaust takes to the aftertreatment system from your engine. So it makes the turbo a fairly critical player in both emissions and fuel economy. If your turbo isn't working right, expect high soot levels, more frequent regens, and possible DPF failure. Um, Boost leaks, that's a big deal. It's a major cause of DPF soot buildup. Um, a boost leak or a cracked charged air cooler hose, bad clamps, leaking intercooler forces the engine to overfuel, leading to excessive soot. The soot packs into the DPF quickly, triggering frequent regens and increasing back pressure. Man, I've said frequent regen probably 10 times so far. So I would say that if your truck is calling for a parked regen when it wasn't doing it before, that's really telling me that it's something's going on with the DPF and your truck is asking for help. Um, Over time, this can lead to turbo failure and simply, a clogged aftertreatment system. Um, you can do a boost pressure test. Low boost pressure equals excess soot. Check for loose clamps or cracks in the charged air hoses. Look for black soot stains around any sort of pipe connection, signs of air escaping, and exhaust leaks. Your VGT or your variable geometry turbo issues, and that can really be an issue. VGT that's out of calibration or has sticking vanes causes poor airflow control, increasing DPF loading, and regens. Um, Always, getting your VGT calibrated is never a bad idea. Generally, most mechanics with a diagnostic laptop can calibrate that. Especially if you just replaced your turbo, always, always, always do the calibration of the VGT. If your turbo is sluggish because the VGT is not, things aren't sweeping properly or whatever it might be, um, that'll throw off your fuel mapping, making the engine run richer than needed, producing more soot. So keep an eye on your boost pressure. If your turbo is slow to spool up, it may mean the turbo vanes may be sticking, VGT vanes. Um, Check the actuator, making sure that everything sweeps properly. Nothing is getting stuck. Nothing's really rusty. What about those turbo seals? So, man, the turbo is really a piece of art. It's spinning, 30,000 RPMs or so. It is running on the bearings need to be lubricated very well, need to run on a film of engine oil. If those things start to go sideways, if the seals start to go bad, guess what? That turbo is going to be pumping oil into the emission system, and it can be a mess. Failing turbo seals dump engine oil into the exhaust, coating the DOC, DPF, and sometimes it gets down in the SCR. And this can and will clog the aftertreatment system, triggering DEF quality codes and costly repairs. Also, sometimes um, people won't realize that the turbo's gone bad and the emission system gets clogged up with oil. So they put the truck into a regen, and that basically turns the emission system into a flamethrower. So watch out if you have an oil leak from the turbo, you want to shut that truck down and don't do anything with it other than get it to a shop to have it looked at because I've seen flames coming out of tailpipe, and that can be damaging and also quite dangerous. Um, so just check the turbo output for any oil residue. If oil has entered the aftertreatment system, we can clean it. It's called an oil-soaked service. But while we do that, you're going to want to fix the turbo, um, and hopefully cross your fingers that that thing's going to last. Um, Bottom line, well-maintained turbo means fewer regens, better fuel economy, better power, a longer lasting truck and aftertreatment system. So keep your turbo healthy and whistling. Um, what do we have for number 7? What role, this is a good one. What role do fuel additives play in maintaining the cleanliness of injectors and emission systems in off-road diesel equipment? Well, let me tell you something. Um, diesel fuel itself um, uh, is can be very often dirty, contaminated. The fuel in the tanks can be water. It can be, it's just basically a mess. So the Clean Air Fleet additive can definitely help off-road equipment. And I would say, off-road and highway, big, small, in between, it is a lifesaver. But especially in the off-road equipment with how hard it works, um, and uh, and especially with, because a lot of times the diesel that is put in off-road equipment is something that is not as well um, stored, as well. It is, maybe not properly handled, so it might get contaminants in it, might get uh, water in it. So the Clean Air Fleet additive is really helpful for that, especially with the water, and especially because these vehicles, this equipment is generally worked much harder, and that's why we also, because of the contamination in the fuel, that's one of the reasons that strongly recommend the 1 micron fuel filtration from Clean Air Fleet for on highway, but especially for off road equipment, because you don't know what you're going to get when that diesel comes out of the fuel truck, and you want to make sure before it goes into your Caterpillar engine or whatever you got on that heavy equipment that it is clean as possible. And yeah, Clean Air Fleet. Give us a call, 404-999-1361, and talk to us about that, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Number 8. What are the consequences of neglecting air filter maintenance on the emission outputs of diesel engines in construction and mining operations? I've gotten a lot, like I said, I've gotten off-road and generator questions lately. So it's good to know that the word is getting out and people are coming to us to have their questions answered. Air filter maintenance is not just something that you do when you feel like it. It is critical for all diesel engines, whether in construction, mining, highway, trucks, but in off-road environments where dust and debris and just general schmutz in the air is everywhere, air filters clog up much faster, making regular inspections even more important. Neglecting your air filter doesn't just hurt performance, which it definitely does. It can wreck your engine and overwhelm your emission system. Um, Air filter failure can dust an engine. When an air filter fails or gets too clogged, the fine dust can bypass the filter and get pulled directly into the engine. This causes premature wear on the pistons, cylinders, turbochargers, all of the moving parts, and that can lead to low compression, oil contamination, and just plain and simple expensive repairs. A dusted engine loses power, burns more fuel, and more often than not require a full rebuild if the damage is severe. So those air filters are definitely an ounce of prevention, pound of cure type of things. So inspect your air filters regularly, whether you've got a over-the-road truck, but definitely if you got an off-road truck, especially if you're in an industrial environment or a agricultural environment where you're around crop dust and that sort of stuff. Use high-quality filters rated for heavy-duty conditions. Don't skimp on your air filter. Starving the engine of air increases soot and the number of regens you have to do. Clogged air filter chokes airflow, throwing off the air-to-fuel ratio and forcing the engine to burn fuel inefficiently. This also creates excess soot, which clogs the DPF faster and leads to more frequent regens. Maybe I should recommend that you keep your air filter dirty because you have to come and see me more often. If the filter is severely restricted, the turbo can also suffer from boost loss, making all of these things far worse. What can you do? Keep an eye on your fuel economy. Um, and if your fuel economy drops, check your air filter. Watch for sluggish acceleration, excessive soot buildup in the exhaust. Um, Poor airflow will affect your turbo and after treatment longevity. Restricted airflow forces the turbo to work harder, increases exhaust gas temperatures, and putting more stress on the after-treatment system. This can lead to DOC overheating, SCR efficiency, and overall system derate and just problems in general. So stick to the manufacturer recommended air filter change intervals or sooner if your conditions are dirty. Check for leaks around the air intake system to prevent unfiltered air from entering. So basically, it comes down to keep it clean or pay the price. Over-the-road truckers, dirty air filters lead to lost power and extra regens. For construction and mining, a clogged air filter can destroy an engine and get you lost power and less performance and more soot. Replacing the air filter is cheap. Replacing the engine is not. Kind of it's kind of just a basic bit of knowledge there. So staying ahead of costly repairs, keep your engine running good, keep your filters clean. All right, what do we have for number 9 here? Excuse me, hang on a second. Where's my water? Just water. It's much better. Number 9. What is the best way to determine if your DPF is cracked or breached before it leads to a major failure? A healthy DPF, or diesel particulate filter, if you didn't know that already, traps not some of the soot, it traps all of the soot. So if any soot is making its way out of your exhaust, you have a cracked or breached DPF, and it's only a matter of time before your after-treatment system will fail you completely. If you see soot on your tailpipe or your stacks, it's the biggest red flag. If you see soot, your DPF simply isn't working, and it's definitely cracked. A cracked DPF lets raw exhaust and soot pass through, coating the exhaust and stacks. And of course, your SCR on the way. If you don't fix this as soon as possible, the soot will build up in your SCR, and that's called SCR poisoning, and that will lead to a full after-treatment failure. Check the tailpipe and stacks for soot buildup. A clean exhaust is good, which means that a dirty exhaust, a black exhaust, is bad. So if you have soot on your tailpipe, schedule a DPF inspection as soon as you can. DPF guys can test, clean, or replace it. If your SCR system is poisoned, if the soot makes it past the DPF for long enough, it will coat the SCR, reducing the SCR's ability to break down NOx, giving you NOx efficiency, SCR conversion, and potentially DEF quality codes. So common symptoms of SCR failure or SCR poisoning are DEF quality codes, higher DEF consumption because the truck is trying to keep up with the SCR is not as efficient because it's loaded up with soot. So it's going to ask for more DEF to be able to compensate for it. Loss of power, forced regens, and increased NOx emissions if you're looking at your diagnostics. So if DEF usage spikes or NOx codes pop up, check your tailpipe. See if it's sooty. If the SCR is contaminated, it may need cleaning or replacement. We do the cleaning. It does work quite well. One thing to keep in mind, if you happen to be the lucky owner of a Volvo or Mack, especially one that is not the newest, I don't know exactly what year range this is, but the Volvos and Macks that have the big SCR that's shaped like a cube, one of our mechanics does call it an oven. They will get SCR conversion issues, and the dealership will immediately replace that part. It's like $7,000 or so. But it can definitely be cleaned. We do it for $325. We keep it overnight, and in the 5 or 6 years we've been doing this, we've only had one that couldn't be recovered. So the odds are really in your favor that we can fix that problem, Volvo or Mack. What else? Black smoke visible from exhaust. Modern diesel trucks never, ever should blow black smoke. The DPF is there to trap it. So if you see black smoke, your DPF is cracked or completely blown out. So if you see smoke, get your after treatment check because the smoke is going to be messing up other stuff. What about bad smells from the exhaust? A cracked DPF lets raw exhaust escape, leading to strong diesel or burnt oil smells. If the SCR is failing, you may also smell ammonia or kind of a cat's pee odor from the unburned DEF because the SCR is not properly catalyzing it. So what to do? Trust your sniffer. Trust your nose. Bad smells mean something's wrong, or you may be lactose intolerant. And then what causes the cracked DPF and how to prevent it? A DPF doesn't just crack on its own. It's always the indication that you've got something going on that is cracking that DPF. One of them is low compression in one or more cylinders. Low compression leads to incomplete combustion, more soot, and excessive back pressure. And in fact, at least in the Detroit engine, If you've got a cracked DPF and haven't had a overhead or an overhead valve adjustment done, kind of two words for the same thing. So you have low compression in one or more cylinders, and you put new DPFs in to replace the cracked ones. The new ones will only last for maybe 10,000 miles, and they will crack again. So always get your overhead done. Another thing can be is failing injectors. Overfueling creates hotter exhaust and rapid carbon buildup, and also that heat can thermally shock the DPF, causing it to crack, and there's your problem. So replace your injectors if your injectors are bad spray pattern, or high, or a possibly leaking fuel into the cylinders. Another thing can be clogged air filters. We talked about air filters in a previous question. But clogged air filter is going to choke airflow, making the engine run rich, produce excessive soot. Turbo calibration issues, poor boost control increases soot and back pressure, stressing the DPF. So inspect your turbo, do your diagnostics on that. And of course, a cracked DPF, unfortunately, will not fix itself. And if left alone, it will take out your entire after treatment system, at least temporarily. So if you see soot on your exhaust pipe or your stack, you see black smoke or get DEF quality codes, check your DPF immediately. Fixing the root cause is always the most important thing. Compression, injectors, air filter, or turbo will keep your next DPF from cracking. If you don't fix the root cause, your next DPF will also crack and plug up, and that is expensive and a nuisance. So, bear with me and make sure you focus on the upstream issue as well. So we can help you test, clean, and replace your DPF before it destroys your SCR and costs you thousands. Catch it early, fix the problems, and keep rolling, keep making money. So if you want to get a hold of us, call us or text us 404-999-1361. 404-999-1361. That's how you get a hold of us. Call us now. Talk to Lynn Diesel if it is after hours. If we're watching this during the day, just call. Someone will answer. Last but not least, I told you to hang out for this, so hopefully you hung around for a little bit, and I'll check to see if any other questions came in. If you want to leave me a question, of course, you can always text or call us at 404-999-1361, or just type the question below or above or on the side, wherever we happen to be, and I will see it and respond to it. Number 10. What is the difference between blue DEF and gas station DEF? I did a video on this, so check out my TikTok. There's a video from last week on this. So let's just get right down to it. All DEF, diesel exhaust fluid, is the same. Just 32.5% high purity urea and 67.5% deionized water. But if you've been around for long, you know that not all DEF is created equal. And it really should be, but quality control, big difference. Blue DEF is tightly controlled and consistently high quality. Every batch is tested to meet the ISO 224.4, so it's 22241 standard, ensuring the correct urea concentration, purity, and zero contaminants. You always want to make sure that when you buy any DEF that it does meet the ISO 22241 standard. I believe all DEF sold has to meet that standard, though I'm not 100% sure. Gas station DEF, when it comes, when it's delivered, should meet that standard. But once it's in the tank, underground, or wherever it might be, all bets are off. So it varies widely. Some stations do a great job keeping their DEF tanks clean, while others have contaminated bulk storage containers, leaky nozzles, or DEF that's been sitting there far too long. Hopefully, if you're going to a busy truck stop, that DEF doesn't hang around for long. But if you're out in the middle of nowhere, you might have DEF in a rusty tank underground with leaking water and everything else, and that can cause trouble. DEF needs to be pure. Any contamination, and that's going to be fuel, oil, coolant, dirt, even water, that will destroy your DEF injector, poison your SCR catalyst, and just generally be a nuisance. If you use bad DEF, expect NOx efficiency codes, frequent regens possibly, and a possible derate. And DEF quality sensors don't lie. If your truck starts throwing DEF-related codes after filling up, you might have just bought a bad batch. And this is why we recommend having DEF contamination test strips and a refractometer in your truck. You can kind of eliminate the DEF in your tank as a possible cause of the issue before you take your truck to a dealership and they charge you a few $100 for diagnostics that you could have done on your own. Another important thing is shelf life and storage conditions. So Blue DEF is properly sealed and labeled with an expiration date, and stored correctly will last up to 2 years. Gas station DEF, who knows? If it's been sitting in a hot underground tank for months, all bets are off. It could be spoiled. So if the gas station doesn't maintain its DEF pump, you could be pumping in DEF that's been contaminated with rust, dirt, or even LJ. Jug DEF generally doesn't have these issues. Any quality brand is fine as long as it's fresh. Any brand of DEF sold in jugs is fine to use as long as it's ISO 22241 certified and fresh. Walmart, Tractor Supply, and other retailers sell quality DEF, but check the box before buying. I recommend not buying a box of DEF if the box is dusty. That means it's been sitting around for a long time. And old DEF can degrade, causing sensor and injector issues. So bulk DEF at a gas station might not be worth the savings. And if it's tempting, if you're tempted to use bulk DEF at the pump, just make sure you've got a tester and you watch out. It's just that if you're not sure of the quality, you may want to go with the jug, because a bad batch can cost you thousands in repairs. So is gas station DEF bad? No, but it can be. So if you trust the station, if it's a Love's, or basically a station where that it's got a lot of trucking business and that DEF is definitely is being turned over quick enough, you're probably 100% safe. But if you're not sure, you may be better off with a $20 jug of DEF. And I've seen them down to like $10. So maybe if you kind of can do the best of both worlds, which is, if you're going to a busy fueling station, a busy truck service area that that DEF is, barely is never more than a few days old, just go ahead and use it. But if something seems a bit sketchy, maybe you'd want to use the jug instead. So let me quick check and see if I've got anything else that came in. And I do not. Thank you everybody who did watch and ask me questions live. That's super cool. If anybody wants to learn more about the fuel additive, look on the bottom of the screen, like right here as it goes across, and simply text the word additive to 404-999-1361. Text the word additive to 404-999-1361, and we will get back to you with pricing and delivery and all that good stuff. So that is a wrap for today's Q&A. I appreciate everybody who has asked questions and all of your comments. We covered a lot: how to prevent expensive DPF failures, how to keep your turbo in top shape, how to reduce regenerations and spot after-treatment issues before they cost you thousands. And now you know the real story behind gas station DEF versus the jugs, so you won't get caught with bad fluid in your tank. If you need professional DPF cleaning, diagnostics, or expert advice, DPF Guys has you covered. Call or text us at 404-999-1361. And if you haven't done a screenshot of this screen, here we are, 404-999-1361. Or go to your Googleizer or whatever and go to dpfguys.com and check out our website. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of this cool stuff that might happen. DM us anytime on any of the channels, please, with your questions. And make sure if you found this helpful, hit that like button, share this with your fellow truckers and diesel people, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next episode. So stay safe, keep those filters clean, and we'll see you on the next live.
days, just clear skies ahead. With DPF guys, your exhaust game's on tread. We got the tools, the skills, the might to get your truck rolling clean into the night. Throttle up, feel that clean airflow. Our service so slick, your ride seals the show. DPF guys, we got the fit so fine. Hit the road with confidence, now the world's your shrine. Bring in that rig, let's get on track.